a similar promise is given by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his nation when he tells them that one day you will go astray and you will follow the footsteps of the Jews and you will follow the footsteps of the Christians step by step, so much so that if they were to walk into the lizard's hole, you will do the same. But in that time, in that period of time, when darkness overcomes goodness and you forget about my words and religion is pulled out of your midst and you forget about all of that which I have told you, you will be given a comforter. You will be given a reminder. You will be given somebody who will come and revive religion at the very end of time, and his name, right, or his title is a Mahdi. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الأم والمهدينا وسلم تسليما السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My dear brother and companion Mark.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much.
God bless you. Today we want to talk about this theme that is present within Islam and the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, that everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the prophets and the messengers before, anything that He's given to anyone, He also grants or gives to Muhammad and the family of Muhammad alayhi salam. And I think that this is, when we look at it from above, at first glance, it might not seem so significant of a matter. But when we begin to hone in on the details and the fine print, it has huge implications that are important for all Muslims and people of faith to understand. So the most obvious illustration of this comes in the prayer, the Muhammadan prayer, the prayer of the sixth covenant, the one that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had established when he says and he commands those who pray to say in their prayer, "O Allah, send your peace and blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad as you've sent your peace and blessings upon Abraham and the family of Abraham." And so here we have an example in the prayer where God is instructing, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is instructing that the people admit, confess with their tongues in their daily prayers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family in the same way that He blessed Abraham and his family. And what were the blessings that God had sent down upon Abraham and his family? Well, one, Abraham is known as the Khalil of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the friend of God, right? And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the Habib of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here we have God granting Muhammad what He granted to Abraham, but even more so, on a closer level, even on a more deeper level than He did to Abraham. If Abraham's the friend, then Muhammad is the beloved. And who is the family of Abraham? The family of Abraham are who? Are Ismail and Isaac, right? Jacob, and the children of Israel, right? The Bani Israel. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose the Bani Israel, the children of Israel, over all of the worlds. And so in the same fashion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must have chosen the family of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam over all of the worlds, but even in a much greater way. And we see this actually plainly being demonstrated in many of the narrations. For example, you have a narration whereby the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein are the masters of all of the youth of paradise. And we have examples of narrations that state that Muhammad and the family of Muhammad have a higher station than the prophets and the messengers. And narrations that state, for example, there's this one narration where in the time of Moses alayhi salam, he's making supplication to his Lord, and he's asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's telling him, you've given me all of what you've given me. Is there anybody else that you have given more or that you love more? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to him that yes, there is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, who's the master of all prophets. So Moses realizes at that point that there is a prophet who's to come, and this messenger will have a station and a rank that is much higher than the rest of the prophets and the messengers. He's the king, he's the imam of the prophets and the messengers. He's the teacher of the prophets and the messengers. He's their leader in prayer. And that's why in the Isra wal Mi'raj, in the story, he goes and he actually leads all of the prophets and messengers in prayer because he is their imam and he is their leader. And so that difference between the one who leads the prayer and the people who are being led, the imam and the congregation, that difference between Muhammad sallallahu alaihi and the rest of the prophets, it is that big. Then the narration continues and God proceeds to explain to Moses that it's not just Muhammad, but also his family. His family have a rank that's special with God and are preferred more so than all of the families of the prophets and the messengers. And so here we see that God is telling Moses that your family is special. Maryam is a prophetess. She speaks to the angels. She receives revelation in the same way that, for example, Mary, the mother of Christ, God had revealed to her or inspired her or spoke to her through an angel who appeared to her, or Lucha, the mother of Moses alayhi salam, when the Quran says that God inspired her and commanded her to put Moses into the basket. Maryam, the sister of Moses, had that same rank, that same station. And she was at a rank of a prophet, right? And Maryam, even though she was at a rank of a prophet, and even though Aaron, the brother of Moses, was his spokesperson, was his companion, was a prophet messenger, and was a chief priest for all of Israel, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, the successor of Muhammad, is the best of all successors. And he's higher than all of the family members and all of the successors of the rest of the prophets and the messengers, all right? And the same thing goes for Fatima Zahra alayhi salam and the rest of the family of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi. The narration continues, and God proceeds to explain to Moses that also the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi has a preference above all other nations and are better than them all. And that the difference between the nation of Muhammad and the rest of the nations is the same difference as Muhammad sallallahu alaihi and the rest of creation. It's that vast of a difference. And so Moses, wishing to see the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi, he asks God, can I see them? God tells Moses, no, you cannot see them. It's not their time yet. But stand between my hands and close your eyes, Moses. And then he calls forward the souls of the nation of the followers of the family of Muhammad, the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi. And Moses hears them from inside of the loins of the people. He hears them saying, لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك. They were saying the لبيك, God, we are for you, we respond to you, we hear you, oh God, for you is kingship, for you is praise. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ended up making this the chant that the believers make at pilgrimage because of what the believers from the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had chanted at that moment when he called them forward from the loins and Moses heard their voices. Okay? And so we see here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants for Muhammad and his family all of that which he granted to the rest of the nations. God chooses Abraham, blesses him, blesses his family, chooses them. He does the same for Muhammad and his family. God prefers the nation of Israel. Well, guess what? God comes and he prefers the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but each time he does so to a higher level and a higher rank. He grants Muhammad and his family that which he granted the others, but more on top of that. And that is also a theme that we find that is really evident in the miracles that were displayed. For example, you have Moses was given the Torah, and in Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given the Quran. And the Quran is better than the Torah, right? According to the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad alayhi salam. Moses, he split the sea with his staff. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with his dua, he split the moon. And so what's more difficult, to split the sea or to split the moon? And so we find consistently these matters appearing in the traditions and in the narrations, this theme which is repeated. And we find it also repeated in the promises which were given to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so when we come to, for example, a promise that was given to the Israelites, right, and Moses had told his people about, and this promise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would send forward from the Israelites a man who would finally pull them out of their slumber, revive for them their religion, all right, and establish justice and equity on the earth, a Messiah figure, right, a figure who comes, Jesus Christ, who is a prophet, but he's different than the rest of the prophets, right? Because he has this additional title, and this title is what? A title of Messiah. Nobody else was a Messiah except for Jesus Christ, right? And this messianic figure was a figure that all of the prophets from the Bani Israel, they looked forward to. And actually they saw their prophethood and their works that they had done as blocks, bricks that they were placing one on top of the other in order that they may pave the road for the appearance and the coming of the Messiah, alayhi salam. And when the Messiah came, he came and he appeared and he taught the people and he showed great miracles and he healed the leper and he cured the blind and he exorcised demons, right? And the souls of the prophets and the messengers, like in the scene of the transfiguration of Christ, they appeared by his side as students of his and disciples. You had Moses and Elijah appearing in front of his disciples in that scene of the transfiguration of Christ. And so Jesus was given all these incredible things, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not have let that pass and not grant a nation and a prophet who is better than Moses, right, and higher than him, and a nation that is better than the Bani Israel, the same thing. And that is exactly why we see that a similar promise is given by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his nation when he tells them that one day you will go astray and you will follow the footsteps of the Jews and you will follow the footsteps of the Christians step by step, so much so that if they were to walk into the lizard's hole, you will do the same. But in that time, in that period of time, when darkness overcomes goodness and you forget about my words and religion is pulled out of your midst and you forget about all of that which I have told you, you will be given a comforter. You will be given a reminder. You will be given somebody who will come to you, whose name is a Mahdi, right? Who's a Mahdi. That's his title. Just like Jesus was given the title of a Messiah, this figure that will come, there's also this special title that's given to a figure who will come and revive religion at the very end of time, and his name, right, or his title is a Mahdi. And so what will the Mahdi do? Certainly he will do those same things, but even more than what it is that Jesus had done. And we will see, and that's why we see in the narrations that some of the miracles that the Mahdi performs parallel the miracles that the prophets and the messengers had done, but on a greater scale. You have, for example, a scene where Jesus is walking on water in the middle of a storm, and his disciples are in a ship. And one of his disciples, Simon Peter, his successor, sees him standing on the water. And so he goes forward to walk on water and to join him. But as he's walking on the water, he begins to descend down. Jesus says to him, "O ye of little faith," right? And he pulls him out of the water as he's beginning to sink and drown down. Well, the same thing happens with the Qa'im, with the Mahdi. The Mahdi, he does not just walk on water, and his successor does not just walk on water, but rather, according to the narrations, his entire battalion of his army, an entire battalion of his army are seen and witnessed by the enemy forces walking on the water. And when they see that, so the enemy's witness, the companions of the Imam writing something on their feet, and then they proceed to walk on the face of the water. And they say that if he does that, right, then if his companions do that, then what is he like? Other narrations state that while Jericho collapsed at the hands of Joshua, son of Nun, and that was a great miracle, right? That the same thing happens with the companions of the Qa'im, but it's not just one city, it's many cities that they pass by, and by the praise, by the words, by the chants of Allahu Akbar, God is great, that the walls to those cities fall down to the ground. And so we see here the miracles repeating themselves. What was given to the prophets and the messengers was given or is given to the Mahdi from the family of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so we shouldn't then think that anything is strange. We shouldn't think that anything is out of the norm. And we should look towards the verses and the stories of the prophets and the messengers to see what they were given, because we will see them again in the Mahdi. And that's why in one particular narration, he puts his back against the Kaaba and he says, whoever wants to see Adam, whoever wants to see Noah, whoever wants to see Abraham, whoever wants to see Jesus or Muhammad, then here I am. Right? I'm the successors and I have more of a right over them, etc., than anybody else. And he proclaims himself to be the successor of the prophets and the messengers. While the prophets and the messengers, the first one to pledge allegiance to him were believers that were with him at that time. The first one to proclaim faith in Jesus Christ was John the Baptist. Well, the first one to pledge allegiance to the Mahdi, according to the narrations, is Gabriel, right? When he comes down and he places his hand in his hand. And so when we come to a particular phenomenon that people are afraid of, and that has to do with the jurisprudence, we find a verse in Surah Imran, verse 50. In the verses that precede that, they're speaking about Jesus and the great miracles that Jesus performs of curings, etc. And we find that Jesus also is being given the book, and he's been taught the Torah, and he's being taught the Gospels. But in that particular verse, it says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and I have come to you confirming that which is in his hands, the Torah. So he comes and he confirms the Torah. That's the first thing that the verse says. Then it says immediately afterwards, and to make halal for you some of that which was made haram. And that's a fascinating verse right there, because there are two matters that in the apparent seem contradicting, and the verse passes over the heads of a lot of people, but there it is. He comes and he confirms the Torah. What's in the Torah? The Torah is stories of the previous prophets and messengers, and it's also law, the law of God. So he comes and he says, yes, this is the law of God. I confirm it. The Torah is true. The Torah is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, I'm coming to make some of that which was made haram for you, now halal. And so going along the same line of thinking that we have conversed about over this past period, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to grant Abraham, Moses, Isaac and Jacob a savior who would come at the end when the Israelites lose faith, and he revives religion, and he confirms the Torah, and he grants them and makes halal for them that which was made haram for them, then we must expect that the Mahdi will come and he will do the same, and he will be sent forward to confirm the Quran, that it's a true message, and confirm the law of God that's in it and the jurisprudence that came down upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also, since the Mahdi is from the family of Muhammad, and since the family of Muhammad is better than the prophets and the messengers, and they are given more so than what the prophets and the messengers were given, then the Savior, the Mahdi from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad will come to confirm the Quran and also to make for the nation of Islam halal some of that which was made previously haram for them. And in that verse in the Holy Quran is a proof that is undeniable, non-refutable evidence that the Mahdi from the family of Muhammad will change the jurisprudence of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it will still be the same religion, the religion of Islam from the time of Adam all the way down, because when Jesus came and he confirmed the Torah and he made halal the haram, it didn't change the fact that he was still a Jew and he was still a believer in the Torah and he was still a member of that same Abrahamic faith. The same thing takes place with the Mahdi. He changes the jurisprudence, and that's why you have many narrations which state that he works by the jurisprudence of David and Adam and Solomon and Moses and Abraham, and the people rebel against him, and then he works by the jurisprudence of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Imam Ahmad al-Hassan alayhi salam stated that at a time after that, he will also work by a new jurisprudence that is different than all of the previous jurisprudences that had ever come down before.
That's amazing, because we all read the Quran. Me, myself, I'm French. I read the Quran many times. I read the Bible many times. And it's true that when we don't have the right key, we are blind. We can read these books for thousands of years, but if somebody from God doesn't come and give us a key that give us the right to see what is true and what is not true, is impossible to see. It's impossible to see. It's like you curing the blind with these lectures. This is what I see when I followed your videos. So thank you so much. And
thank you so much, Mark. God bless you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.